And welcome to another edition of Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 28-year veteran of comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games as a writer, illustrator, and editor. Hello, Arlene Atkinzel. Welcome to the show. Today is day 24 of Booktober. We are going to review a few more comics today and hopefully get some done for tomorrow as well. And later today, around 3 p.m., we will have a live draw session. So we'll be doing basically sets of sketch cards on templates like these. I'm doing nothing but different types of jack-o'-lanterns. So we won't get all those done. We'll do as many of those as we can over the span. And those will be given away free on Halloween Day at the Scratch and Spin Halloween event at Scratch and Spin Records here in Columbia, South Carolina. So let's go ahead and get to our videos, or our review rather, for today. We start with, whoa, something's not right here. That's great. One of my pieces got screwed up. Oh, well. No problem. I can cover it. We're going to cover World of Krypton 1 through 4. It's from DC Comics in 1987. It's a 4-issue miniseries written by John Byrne, drawn by Mike Mignola with Rick Bryant and, can't think of the gentleman's first name, but his last name is Garzone as anchors. The covers are by John Byrne and Walt Simonson. We'll go ahead and go to the next page. And what it's about is the series explored historical implications that ultimately led to the destruction of the planet Krypton. The revised history and culture of the modern Krypton differs greatly from that of the pre-crisis Krypton of the Silver Age continuity. This series is very much influential in many ways, partly because it was part of the Crisis reboot of the 1980s that redefined Superman's history, but also because it was the story that led to all the reboots of Superman that have come since. Byrne and Mignola do a very nice job with the storyline, but after seeing Mignola's Hellboy art style for the past 25 years now, it's a bit odd to go back and look at his early superhero work. It's very different in style and technique than what he has eventually become known for. I really like the covers by Byrne and Simonson, and I wish that they had teamed up with Simonson inking John Byrne a lot more often than they have. But for those who don't know what this story is about, Byrne gave the history of Krypton a lot of political and social drama. There's cloning technology that's gone wrong with societal disparity. The clones don't have any rights. Often they're in tanks just waiting to be used as spare parts for the original bodies if something happens, like if they get injured or their internal organs fail or something, they just use the clones to replace the body parts. And they also have clones that are just, I guess you could say, like second-class citizens, and they're having basically having a race war between the Kryptonian originals and the clones. There's murder-suicides in the House of Kryptonian repute. And he shows how the clones are used to heal the injuries. Like I said, the bodies are mutilated, and then the parts are given to the naturals so that they can survive great traumas and injuries. And so there's a lot to dislike about this history of Krypton, and it makes you, instead of feeling sympathetic for Superman and his race because their planet got destroyed, it kind of shows how they basically destroyed themselves. And so a lot of people didn't like that. But the truth is, it's a very well told science fiction story that DC has utilized extremely well later on, because a lot of this stuff is played into later stories like Death of Superman, the clone Superboy, and how Superman reacted to the clones. Superboy, the cyborg Superman is another version. These harken back to elements of this storyline. So, as hated, and I use that in quotations, as Byrne's version of things supposedly was, clearly it had a major influence on the direction of the character ever since. The storyline is recommended for ages 13 and up, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. And this is Mike Mignola's artwork for that series with Bryant. Mignola is doing breakdowns, more or less, and Bryant is doing the finishes. That means that a lot of the artwork is more Rick Bryant than Mike, I suppose. But as you can see, this is kind of like a Warhammer robot or a soldier type thing. It's what it immediately reminded me of it when I saw this. I almost wonder if somebody from Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer 40K was a Byrne fan and read this and said, "Hey, do a design like this." But yeah, you can sort of see the Mignola in it, but it's much more open and much more straight ledge lines and not the heavy blacks that Mignola would later become known for. And here's some more of that. And you can see some of Mignola's, uses of shadow and stuff here in some of it. You can see, like, why does she have a black eye kind of in here? That's kind of Mike putting it in there, but not really doing a good job, and Bryant not really knowing how to ink that. But you can see some of it. You can see the Mignola in it, but it's still kind of rudimentary comparative to what Mignola has evolved into over the years. Our next book is Smilin Ed Smiley, or Smilin Ed Comics, number 1 and 2. The publisher was Fantico Enterprises. The artists are Raul Vazina, who does the rat, Smilin Ed, and Fred Hembeck, who does the dog, which is a backup feature in the first issue. The genre is comedy, and it was released originally in 1980. And what it's about is the misadventures of Smilin Ed Smiley the rat, and then the other feature, the dog. In this first book, Ed takes on the job of being a radio DJ for a day, and hilarity ensues. Then in Fred Hembeck's backup, the dog, it's a short story that basically parodies Batman and Robin. It's a music fare from Hembeck, but nothing special. He's done much better. The other short in the first issue has Ed at a bar during happy hour that gets out of hand. The second issue is about Ed getting mixed up in a heist by jumping into the wrong cab and getting the wrong suitcase when he gets thrown out of the cab. The one that was full of money that the robbers stole from the bank, which eventually lands him in jail because they think he's the one who actually did the robbery. Vazino's work is very fun, and there is a complete Smilin Ed collection from Fantico, Fantico.net from 1995 that collects all the Smilin Ed stories from what I think were 6 or 8 issues total. So you might want to check that out by going to Fantico.net and looking that up instead of trying to get these back issues, because apparently the back issues are very hard to come by and they're not in very good shape. I got lucky. I got a pretty decent copy of number 1, but even my number 2 is pretty ragged, to be honest. Recommended for ages 16 and up, and a rating of 4 out of 5 stars. Let's take a look at some of the artwork. This is Smilin Ed not liking the different kinds of music and stuff going on. And they say, okay, fine, you can program your own 12 hours on this very station. You can be DJ for a day. So he sits there and he tries to call in, and he gets the 136th call in, and he won. So he's now DJ for one day. And they go to Wahoo FM. And he's like, okay, time to voice your choice and give us a buzz, cuz it's that magic moment we call request time. So call them in, cadets, and keep it clean. And I all want to hear Flea Bird. Not Freebird, Fleabird. So, he's basically going a little bit crazy for all the requests for Fleabird. And then he does it. He cuts from that to the news, and it's interesting, fun stuff that he goes into that. He gets pulled out of the station basically at the end of the 12 hours and kicked out of the studio. And this is the dog. The dog is like a humanoid Batman in a dog suit, and he bites villains on the ankles. And he's got this guy like on a dog leash, took to the wall with a note with the dog print on. I'm like the bat symbol there. And then here's the guy who's supposed to be the dog in his Bruce Wayne civilian identity. And the Commissioner Gordon character is like, it's like, all I have to do around here is clean up after that blasted crime fighter. I don't feel like the head of the police department. I feel as though I'm in charge of a uniformed pooper scooper squad. And so they leave with the criminal, and the guy who is the dog gets down on his knees and sniffs the fire hydrant. So little stuff like that is kind of fun. It's amusing. Little storyline. Which fun series are you talking about, Arlene? The Smilin Ed or the Krypton? We got a few more books to go, but I'm waiting to see who else is here. I wonder if John's around. You there, John Norris? I got at least 2 viewers here showing. Smiling Ed, okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's a fun little comic. You might want to, like I said, go ahead and check the fanaco.com website for that. It's like $19.95 for all of the trade. Our next book is True Believers, Black Widow, and the Avengers #1 for $1. The publisher was Marvel. The writer is Steve Englehart. The penciler was Don Heck. The inker was Mike Esposito, and the colorist was David Hunt. The genre is superhero, and it was originally released in May of 1973, but it's been reprinted in lieu of the Black Widow movie, and it just came out this past week here in October of 2020. And what it's about is this is a reprint from Avengers #111, and Magneto has managed to figure out mind control and has the X-Men and Avengers in his thrall fighting against each other, and Daredevil and Black Widow join in on the festivities. There's not much else to say about it. It's a decent enough one-shot story. I recommend it for ages 13 and up. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Well, here's the book. And there's some of the original art there, or not the original, the art from Don Heck and Mike Esposito. It's not horribly bad or anything like that. I just didn't have time to scan everything in today. A lot of ads that cut up the story space. So I'm trying to find a double page spread. There we go. I don't know if that's because of how Marvel was producing the books and that's how they were doing it and how it was cut with ads back then. It probably was. But it looks very strange when you read them in today's format because the modern ads that they put in or house ads for the modern stuff look so dramatically different from the artwork of back then that it jars you a little bit from the story. Whereas at least when we had real ads from back then, it disrupted the story pacing a little bit, but at least you felt like you're in the right era, I guess you could say. Let's see what our next book is. That would be True Believers, Black Widow, Darkstar, #1 for $1. And this is again by Marvel. The writer was Tony Isabella. The George Tuska was the penciler. Inked by Vince Coletta. Colors by Phil Raish or Rachelson. I've seen both credits for this when I looked it up. In the book, it says Raish, so I don't know if it was just Raish because that was all the space there was in the where the lettering was, or if that's what he used as a pen name, or what the situation was. Anyway, genre is superhero. This was originally released in August of 1976, and again reprinted and released this past week in October of 2020. And what it's about is the champions are Angel of the X-Men and Iceman of the X-Men, Ghost Rider, Hercules, and Black Widow. And Angel and Ghost Rider failed to prevent Darkstar, who's a Russian spy superheroine, and Griffin, who's another character, from liberating Stuart Clark from his hospital room from a previous issue. Meanwhile, the champion's office is attacked by a small remote-controlled missile. When Ivan and Black Widow analyze it, they recognize the calling card of Natasha's old trainer, Alexei Bruskin. Widow spots Bruskin on a nearby rooftop and dives out the window to go confront him, but the two former comrades are quickly interrupted by the arrival of Titanium Man. Again, this is a pretty average, run-of-the-mill comic, 3 out of 5 stars, recommended for ages 13 and up. Arlene says, I gave all my Avengers to my son. I only had a few, but they were so busy with text bubbles, it was difficult to get into them. Well, how old was your son when you gave them to him? Here's some of the George Tuska, Vince Coletta art. A lot of people don't like Vince Coletta's inks. I don't know. I think he does a decent enough job. I've never hated Vince's art. I'm not saying he's the best inker in the world, but a lot of people just You gave him to your son, and when he was 28, or when he was younger than that? Because I don't know why. I mean, it's difficult, I guess, in some cases. Because I mean, if you're not, I guess you could say, trained to learn it from an early age, I guess it can be difficult to get into the comic books. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to tell because I started reading comics from a very young age, like 2 or 3. So I guess it just depends on what the story is and how much text is. I mean, if Avengers was confusing, I hate to see what he do with Claremont and X-Men. Let's go ahead and go on to the next one. And that is our last True Believers Black Widow book, Taskmaster #1. It is also $1 from Marvel. The writer is David Michelini with George Perez pencilers, inked by Jack Abel, and colorist Carl Gafford. The genre is superhero. Was originally released in June of 1980, re-released this past week in October of 2020. And what it's about, this issue introduces the Taskmaster character to the Marvel Universe. He has Ant-Man, Wasp, Wizard from the Liberty Legion and some other heroes captive, and it takes Black Widow and other Avengers to free them, but the bad guy escapes. This reprints Avengers Volume 196. It's a good story by Mignola. Unfortunately, Jack Abel is not a good inker matchup for Perez, and art is slightly underwhelming for a George Perez book. The cover is gorgeous. I've always loved this cover. I'm not sure who inked it. I don't think it was Abel, though. I think Rubenstein might have inked this cover. I'm not sure. I'd have to check that out real quick. But anyway, we have the book here. It doesn't. Where it would have been signature, they got the little logo with the stuff there. So I don't know who actually did it, but you can see, this really, the line weight for George is, Jack's inks are a little bit heavy on it, and you don't get the fine detailist look that Perez has become known for. The layouts are there. The structure of storytelling is there. And you can see some of the Perez facial structures and stuff. But like I said, Jack Abel kind of heavily inks it. And here we go. This is what I'm talking about. These, they're basically marketing the trade paperbacks that they've got of these old classic stories, which is great, but it kind of looks weird at the same time. Here's another one, one page and then another ad, back to back, He's given us his history as how he's able to emulate what he sees on television of anybody doing the other superhero works he can do. If you don't know what Taskmaster's ability is, he has photographic reflexes. In other words, he sees somebody do something, he can duplicate it perfectly. Okay. But overall, it's not bad. The Avengers crashed the party. And at least that looks very much like an 80s Perez, that particular page. But overall, I think Jack was not his best collaborator for art. But that pretty much concludes our reviews for today. Next, tomorrow, we will have back issue number 122, which is a issue dedicated to the history of the Teen Titans. Jade Man Kung Fu Special number 1 from Jade Man Comics, and Futurians number 1 from Dave Cockrum. And that's what we'll be covering tomorrow. If you want to reach me before then, you can reach me on Facebook at lewis.brightraven, deviantart.com/brightraven, on YouTube at Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven. You can email me at quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com or at Yahoo, Lewis Brightraven at yahoo.com. The regular podcast, the weekly show, airs Thursday nights at 9 p.m., but we are doing daily Booktober for the month of October, where we do reviews of books and comics throughout the month. And we are doing live draws on the weekend. The next live draw will be at 3 p.m. today. Okay, most of them were good. Okay. Just want to make sure I reread that right. So that's pretty much it for today. I will see you guys in about an hour for the live draw. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.